Well, welcome everyone to another week of Crosswinds Online. I'm Sarah, I'm the small groups pastor here, and I am so glad you've tuned in with us today. Hopefully, this sheltered in place Thanksgiving still afforded you lots of reasons to be thankful, even if it looked quite different from any other year. I, for example, continue to be thankful for mashed potatoes. Every year, all the time. It's true. In fact, I'm notoriously weird about not letting my food touch on my plate and eating each different food one at a time. And every year, my little brother, who really, he's 6'4", there's nothing little about him, he finds a way to get at my dinner plate on this holiday and mix all my food together because it drives me crazy. But I do still love Thanksgiving. So, as we enter into a time of worship together, I hope that this week has reminded you of some things that you're grateful for, and that we can worship God together in this way is one of those things for me. So let's sing together now.
I'll sing it is well with my soul. My God is still in control. My God is still in control.
It's so good to worship together today. We know it's online and that's not what we're used to, but we're so thankful to be able to do this. In fact, just a reminder that this online service is the main way that we're connecting in this time. In addition, we're also able to hold an outdoor service on Sundays at 10 a.m. for 100 people or less. If you'd like to be a part of that Sunday gathering, it's really important that you register online to reserve your spot. Then keep an eye on the website for any information about weather or things that might impact the service. We are planning a very special Christmas experience for you and your families. We've decided to turn our usual creative Christmas efforts toward using this amazing 35-acre campus we've been blessed with and offer something we are calling Christmas at Crosswinds, a walk-through journey to Bethlehem. Over the course of 5 evenings leading up to Christmas, we will be offering safe, socially distant, outdoor walking tours where you will experience different scenes from the Nativity story. This year, tickets will be for sale for $5 each in order to cover the extra cost of some of our furry friends that we have hired to make an appearance. Tickets are on sale now on our website. Don't miss out on Christmas with Crosswinds this year. Last year, we launched our Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood initiative and introduced you to an organization called Foster the Bay. The vision of Foster the Bay is not only to find a home for every foster child, but also a church for every one of those children. Their goal is to find families within churches who can foster a child and then have that church community rally around and support that family. In the midst of all the changes during these COVID times, the needs of vulnerable children in foster care are greater than ever. The financial stress on families has led to many kids being left without a family to support them. If you're interested in learning more about how to care for vulnerable children in the Bay Area as a foster family, a support friend, or an advocate, there are 2 interest meetings coming up on December 3rd and December 8th, both held virtually, and you can register for either one at fosterthebay.com/RSVP. So, I'm the small groups pastor here, which means that one of my biggest goals at Crosswinds is to help you be more connected to our church family. And I want to tell you about something specifically for college-aged folks at Crosswinds who are looking to connect with others in your same season of life. And who happen to like delicious chocolatey gooey goodness of s'mores. Join us for S'mores Night. We're gathering Friday, December 11th at 7 p.m. at the church fire pit for a casual time to meet new friends and re-engage with the ones we haven't seen in a while. We hope you'll join us, and you're welcome to invite a friend to come too. You can DM us on the Crosswinds Instagram or email me at sholstra@crosswindschurch.org to reserve your spot. See you there. We offer 3 ways for you to continue to support Crosswinds Church. You can mail a check, you can give online through our website, or you can text 77977. Thank you for the ways that you have continued to support what happens here at Crosswinds. Today, we are continuing in our series, Waitlist, Thriving in the Not Yet. As we get ready to hear the message, I want you to be thinking about what it feels like when you're really hungry and you just don't think you can wait until dinner's ready. Maybe you can relate to what you're about to watch.
as I start off today, I want to see if you can relate to this experience I have quite often, and it has to do with food cravings, and here's what I mean. The other day, I was craving a Chipotle burrito, a carnitas burrito with cilantro rice, corn salsa, queso, and guacamole. And when I say I was craving this, I mean I wanted it so bad. But honestly, at 8 o'clock at night, who wants to get in their car and drive to Chipotle? So instead of eating a Chipotle burrito, I turned to some other things that I thought might satisfy the craving. Okay, so the first thing I tried was a bowl of ice cream. But a bowl of ice cream doesn't have that smoky carnitas taste. And I was missing just that tang of the cilantro lime rice, and it just didn't cut it. So then I turned to a bowl of my favorite, Honey Nut Cheerios. And you know what? Same thing. Cheerios are not the same as slow braised pork wrapped in a tortilla. And so the craving, the hunger to have the burrito was still there. Okay. So the next thing I turned to, which I thought would absolutely do the trick, was a box of Wheat Thins, the big ones, because the big ones are the best, and a whole wheel of brie cheese. And guess what? No dice. A cracker and brie, as good as it was no substitute for Chipotle. You see, when you get hit with a craving, there's almost no way to satisfy it other than to eat that food, preferably as fast as humanly possible. But it doesn't stop us from snacking our way to trying to satisfy it, right? There's something about that deep-seated want that causes us to fill up on a bunch of other stuff until the craving is gone. So turn to the person next to you right now, or whoever you're watching this with, and tell them something that you frequently crave. Go. Okay. Well, you all just shared something that you crave a lot. And while that thing that you just said you frequently crave, there is a science behind why you crave it. You see, when you crave chips, it's not that you're really craving or need sodium or carbs. It's because you have managed to set up a habit of eating them when you're hungry. And that habit has turned into a craving. But here's the kicker. As your body grows accustomed to eating that food during times of hunger, your desire for that food only grows. And science actually backs this up. According to Tufts, as an enjoyable food is consumed, the pleasant feeling of the experience is determined by hormone receptors. And over time, these receptors may become less sensitive to the hormones produced when we enjoy a particular food. So eventually, we may need to consume more and more of that food to have the same pleasant experience, similar to the reward circuit seen in drug and cigarette addictions. I mean, did you catch that? These cravings, they can be so strong that they rival addictions, meaning no matter how much you try and satisfy that craving with other things, nothing will satisfy it until you get the exact thing you want. Well, our human nature to fill ourselves with things that we think are going to ease those kinds of longings doesn't just happen with food cravings. It happens when we experience pain as well. And here's what I mean. This year, we've all been no stranger to pain. Pain has not eluded any of us, right? Well, throughout this series, we've said that waiting itself can be painful. Just the anxiety, the unknown, the patience it requires to wait can cause us to be uncomfortable. It can be painful. But there are some things that we wait for, some things that are so deep and so tender. The waiting for them becomes agonizing. Well, when I think about this kind of painful wait, I think about a friend of mine who woke up one day and her daughter announced that she didn't want to be part of their family anymore, and she just left. She deserted her family, and she became estranged from her parents without explanation. And the agony her parents felt, not knowing where she went or what they'd done to cause the break in their relationship, the pain was unimaginable. And throughout this pandemic, we've gotten phone calls and emails from people asking us to pray. I've gotten 3 different emails, in fact, from people asking for prayer for their spouses who have lost their jobs. And it sent their spouse into deep depression and sometimes even a break with reality. And the only thing they can do at this point is just pray and wait for employment and just wait for their spouse to heal. And I think about any woman out there who's ever wanted a child and not been able to have one. These are the kinds of weights that produce groaning in your soul. And this kind of waiting produces pain that there are no words for. There's only heartache. And the longer we wait for that thing we want so dearly, the deeper the pain grows. And for every single one of us, that's when our human nature kicks in and we start to fill ourselves with things we think will make the pain go away. And kind of like we saw in that video earlier, we fill ourselves up with things we don't really need, hoping that that cramping in our heart and our soul will stop until the real longing is filled. And sometimes this becomes really dangerous. If you have to be honest, sometimes we become so consumed with filling ourselves that we become a slave to the pain of waiting rather than focusing on the hope of our desires being filled. And so, Crosswinds, here's why we need to address this as we continue on in our Waitlist series. If you are so full of stuff you don't need, you won't be able to receive the things that you need to thrive. And I'm going to say it again. If you're so full of stuff you don't need, you won't be able to receive the things that you need to really thrive. You see, throughout this series, we've been giving you items to put on your wait list, things you need to know, do, or be while you wait that can help you thrive. And today I want to show you 2 more things that you can add to your wait list, especially if you are experiencing a particularly painful wait. And so I want to introduce you to someone in the Bible who was in the middle of a very pain-filled and painful wait. And she actually found a way to recover her life. And I want to share her story with you. So we're going to look at 1 Samuel chapter 1. And I want to introduce you today to a woman named Hannah. We're going to read, and this passage will give you a little bit of an idea about who she is. 1 Samuel 1, 1 through 8. Let's read it. It says, "There was a certain man of Ramathaim Zophim of the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah. And he had 2 wives. The name of one was Hannah, and the name of the other Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. Now this man used to go up year by year from his city to worship and to sacrifice to the Lord of hosts at Shiloh. On the day when Elkanah sacrificed, he would give portions to Peninnah his wife and to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he gave a double portion because he loved her, though the Lord had closed her womb. And her rival used to provoke her grievously to irritate her because the Lord had closed her womb. So it went on year after year. As often as she went up to the house of the Lord, she used to provoke her. Therefore, Hannah wept and would not eat." So let me just set the scene for you. If I had to describe this scene or this passage is a description of the ultimate family car ride from hell. We have all had them. You might have just had one over the Thanksgiving holiday, so the memory might be fresh for some of you, but this was a family car ride from hell. So let me just build a picture for you of Hannah's family vacation, okay? So first we have Hannah, we have her husband Elkanah, and then we have Peninnah. And they were on a trip to a place called Shiloh to celebrate their religious holiday. It was kind of like their Christmas, okay? So I guess you could say they were on their way to church. And this was a really long car ride. This wasn't 10 minutes away, but it was days away. Well, right after we're given this information, we're given the first telling details about Hannah. The passage says that God had closed her womb and she was unable to have children. Now, I need to just stop right now, and I want to point out that when we're told God closed her womb, understand that that was their interpretation of what was happening. Here at Crosswinds, we don't believe that things like infertility or illness are caused by God, but back then, that was how they interpreted what was happening, okay? It's important that you understand that. But this particular detail about Hannah is by far the most important, because this was the thing that was causing her painful wait. I mean, just wanting a baby and not being able to have one, that fact alone right there, it just rips at your heart. But the passage also tells us that Hannah is one of 2 wives. And I know that sometimes when we read stories like this in the Old Testament, it seems like everyone had multiple wives. But just so you know, this was not a common practice. It was actually out of the ordinary during this time for a man to have 2 wives. So get this. Elkanah is the only commoner in the book of Samuel and Kings who is mentioned as having more than 1 wife. And chances are he has to have 2 wives because Hannah couldn't give him a child. And so he had to marry another woman so he could have a child. He could have an heir. And so if you're Hannah in this story, this is absolutely humiliating. And if that's not enough, the passage tells us that each time these 2 wives came together to take this trip, Peninnah would demean her about her childlessness. This was like a cruel episode of the Real Housewives of the Middle East. I mean, Peninnah would just throw it in her face every day to the point where she stopped eating and drinking. And so, Crosswinds, what you need to know is that this is a woman who has become consumed. She is a shell of herself at this point. I mean, the pain of waiting for a child, it is actually killing her, and she is starving herself. She is allowing the pain to consume her. And if I had to guess at how she might be feeling, I would use the words not enough, humiliated, terrified, angry, resentful. All of the words apply. But I think if I had to pick one word to describe her, it would be invisible. She did not exist in her culture. And she was making herself invisible by not eating and drinking, maybe so she could just waste away. So I just want to stop and ask, how many of you right now are in the middle of a pain-filled wait? And one of these words is following you, or one of these words, or something like it, is the primary word you would use to describe your life right now, because you have been allowing yourself to be filled and consumed with emotions that are causing you to waste away. Well, let me show you what Hannah does when she finds herself in this place. Hannah actually shows us an alternative. Look at what it says in 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 9. It says, after they had eaten and drunk in Shiloh, Hannah rose. Now Eli the priest was sitting on the seat beside the doorpost of the temple of the Lord. She was deeply distressed and prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly. As she continued praying before the Lord, Eli observed her mouth. Hannah was speaking in her heart, only her lips moved, and her voice was not heard. Therefore, Eli took her to be a drunken woman. And Eli said to her, how long will you go on being drunk? Put your wine away from you. Now, I just need to stop right here for a second and say, this is really weird. I think this is one of the strangest scenes in the Old Testament. And there's a lot of strange things in the Old Testament, but this is really weird to me. Because here we have a woman during her Christmas season, and she's at church, she's at the temple, and she's praying. And Eli, the priest, he sees her praying, and he's like, oh my gosh, she must be drunk. And I'm a pastor, and I've seen a lot of people pray, and I think I'm pretty good at discerning if someone is drunk or if they're praying. So why can't a priest recognize a praying woman when he sees one? Well, the reason is that God had become so lost during the holiday season that people didn't really come to the temple to pray. They came to party. And they used the churches of their day to throw parties and get drunk and do things that were unmentionable. Listen to what one commentary says about this particular scene. The fact that Eli supposed her to be drunken proves that religion was at a very low ebb in Shiloh. For it seems drunken women did come to the place, and lewd women were to be found there. The fact that Eli suspected Hannah of drunkenness doesn't speak well for what he had seen around the tabernacle area previously. So in that day, the temple was the place that you would go to if you kind of wanted to tie one on, okay? And you know what? No one would have blamed Hannah for filling herself up with food and alcohol to try and meet the painful want in her soul, because she was the nobody, remember? In fact, Eli might have even known who she was, because she was the woman married to the guy with 2 wives. And that was like wearing a scarlet letter if you were one of the wives. And if you were the one without the gaggle of children around you, everyone would know who you were and that you were the one who wasn't able to have children. But Hannah is not drunk here. This is where Hannah shows us an alternative, and it turns things around for her and sets her life on a totally new trajectory of healing and restoration. Look what happens next in the passage. It says, she was deeply distressed and prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly. I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord. All along, I have been speaking out of my great anxiety and vexation. And this brings me to the first point to add to your wait list, and here it is. When your wait gets painful, pour out your soul. When your wait gets painful, pour out your soul. And sometimes I think we have a really sanitized way of reading the Bible. Like, we tend to think that when we read something like this, it's really clean. Like, she's just crying softly in the front of the church. But I want to tell you, this is an ugly outpouring. That word mar, used for bitter, it means bitterly bitter. This is loud, uncontrollable sobbing. And let's be honest, if she's in that much pain, maybe she's cursing some people here. Maybe she's cursing herself, or maybe even she's cursing God. I don't know. But what we do know is that this is bitter. And bitter doesn't tend to be quiet or clean. But what we need to see is that in this moment, Hannah allows herself to be emptied of all the emotions she's been allowing herself to be filled with that have been killing her instead of sustaining her. And I think sometimes we're really afraid to be that real, that we're afraid to do an ugly soul dump before God because we're afraid of the consequences. Like, God's going to get angry or mad, or even worse, if I'm honest, he's not going to give me that thing I really want and that I'm waiting for if I tell him how totally ticked off and hurt I am, maybe even at him. But here's what you got to know. Please listen. Ugly soul dumps are necessary. You really have to get in there and recognize the things that you've been allowing to overpower you and the things you've been a slave to. That's the only way you can begin to release them and make room for what God wants to give you. Listen to what Hannah says next to God. She says to him, "O Lord of hosts, look on the affliction of your servant and remember me." You know, Chris talked about this phrase, remember me, a little bit the first week we started the series, and I absolutely agree with him. I think it's really weird when people in the Old Testament would pray for God to remember them, like somehow he just forgot that they were there. But if you remember in that sermon, when he talked about it, it was in the sense that God remembered Noah. It was this idea that God actually saw Noah in the midst of waiting for those floodwaters to dry up. But when we see this phrase appear here, it is totally different. For one, God isn't doing the remembering. It's Hannah who's asking God to remember her. And two, when she asks for God to remember her, it doesn't mean remembering as in recalling something to mind. It means this. It means to pay special attention to or lavish special care upon someone or something. And so when she prays for God to remember her, she's saying, you know what, God? I'm tired. I am so tired of feeling invisible to you. I know that you're here. Give me your attention. No, wait, don't just give me your attention. Pay special attention to me. In fact, why don't you just go ahead and give me everything you've got? I am ready to receive what you have for me. It is your turn to fill me. And this is the thing that turned it all around for Hannah. You see, Hannah wanted a baby, but she desperately needed God. She wanted a baby, but she needed God. She needed to know that she was not insignificant to him and that he could bless her. And so she says, you know what, God? Spoil me. And I'm telling you, her request is such a good reminder that we can be consumed with the weight and all the junk that swirls around us in the weight that we forget about what we need. And so here's the next thing I want you to put on your wait list. When you are waiting for what you want, ask God for what you need. Some of you need to pray that same prayer that Hannah did, because maybe you feel like God has lost sight of you and you feel invisible to him. And right now, you can ask him to remember you. Some of you are waiting for a job, and the fear and anxiety that comes with not working has overpowered your need to pray for patience and for peace. Some of you are so tired that you don't even know what you need, but you can still ask God to give you what you need, even if you don't know what it is. And so when you ask God to give you what you need, he has the ability to meet the much deeper needs you have, even the ones you didn't even know were there. When you invite God to meet your needs, not just the wants, I'm telling you, it can ease the craving in your soul from not getting the thing you're waiting for. It is soul satisfying in ways that you can't anticipate. Well, it's one thing for me to say it, but how do I even know that's true? Well, I want to show you what happens next in Hannah's story. We're told that eventually God did give Hannah what she wanted. He gave her a son, and you know what she did with that baby? She gave that baby right back to God. I want to fill you in on one thing we didn't read while Hannah was praying. While she was praying, she kind of struck this deal with God, and she bargained with him, and she said, God, if you give me a son, I'll give him right back to you so he can serve you. And guess what happened? God did give Hannah a son. She named him Samuel, but she has to live up to her end of the bargain, and she's got to give him back. And this is gut-wrenching for her, because once Samuel was born, she only got to keep him for about a year. And once he was weaned, she had to give him back to Eli the priest so that Samuel could be raised in the priesthood and become a servant of God like she promised. Well, if it were me, this is a part in the story where I would start renegotiating, really. Like, God, do you really, really want me to give him back? Can I just say that he belongs to you and we can go with that? Because listen, it's one thing for Hannah to grieve what she didn't have, this baby. It's another thing to experience what it's like to have the very thing you want and then have to turn around and give it away. And so you would expect maybe a little more ugly outpouring here. But look at what she says after releasing Samuel to Eli. She says, my heart rejoices in the Lord. The Lord has made me strong. I rejoice because you rescued me. No one is holy like the Lord. There is no one beside you. There is no rock like our God. And I don't know if I would be saying that after giving away my 1-year-old, but something has changed in Hannah. Not only is that stigma of being able to have children gone, she's no longer going to be ridiculed by the other wife. She knows the joy of being a mother, but more than that, she has become fortified in her soul. She's gone from being broken to being happy, strong, and secure in her trust of God, even in the midst of giving the very thing she wanted back to him. And isn't that more than any of us could ever ask for? In the midst of your very painful weight, what wouldn't you give to be able to say, even though the weight is painful, God has made me happy, strong, and secure? What you need to know today is that in the midst of your very painful weight, God has not forgotten about you. I believe he wants to do the same thing for you that he did for Hannah. He wants to show you special attention and lavish his love on you in ways that you don't expect or anticipate. And if you invite him to, he can meet the deeper needs you have, even the ones you didn't even know were there. So the question I have for you is this: in the midst of waiting for what you want, are you ready to ask for what you need? And are you willing to pour out your soul and ask God to spoil you? So I want to invite you to consider what this means for you. What are the things you need to release? And what are the words you need to say to God right now?
All right, let's all sing this together. Sing blessed. Blessed are the ones who do not bury all the broken pieces kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Hope is in the Lord. Keep your eyes on Him. Blessed are the ones who walk in kindness, even in the face of great abuse. Blessed are the deeds that go unnoticed, serving with unguarded gratitude. Blessed are the ones who fight for justice, longing for the coming day of peace. Blessed is the soul that thirsts for righteousness, welcoming the last and lost and least. The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Hope is in the Lord. Keep your eyes on Him. The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Hope is in the Lord. Keep your eyes on Blessed are the ones who suffer violence and still have strength to love their enemies. Blessed is the faith of those who persevere. Though they fall and never know defeat, the kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Hope is in the Lord. Keep your eyes on Him. The kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Hope is in the Lord. Keep your eyes on Him. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Hope is in the Lord. Keep your eyes on Him. 'Cause the kingdom is yours. The kingdom is yours. Hold on a little more. This is not the end. Hope is in the Lord. our prayer today, Lord, is that we will place our trust and our confidence in what you have waiting for us, God. We'll believe that your mercy and your grace is worth waiting for, God. Even though it's hard. Even when it's hard, God.